Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this Live at Lunch webinar with the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. We will get started in just momentarily. I wanted to highlight one big event that's happening next month here in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania March for Life. So Monday, September 27th at 11 o'clock, there are thousands of people from across the state coming to Harrisburg to rally to protect life, to stand up for the protection of human life. At the recording of this webinar in California, there is the California March for Life, where folks around their state are coming together to stand for the protections of life in that state, partnering with the National March for Life in advancing the cause in different states. So we are proud to partner with the March for Life in seeing this first ever Pennsylvania March for Life come to Harrisburg. So for details, I certainly recommend to find the website pamarchforlife.org. You can find details of the event. There's a morning mass. There's the rally happening at 11 o'clock at the Capitol, followed by a march around the state Capitol building. And we're encouraging folks around the state to come together. This is a great opportunity for us as a state to stand for life, to show our elected officials the importance of this, and just really come together in a collective unity in standing for life. So we're looking forward absolutely to this upcoming event. Again, pamarchforlife.org. You can find more information. There are buses. There's over at least 50 buses from all parts of Pennsylvania coming to this march. So if you need a ride, there are some buses that are available. You can find information at pafamily.org for some of that information. So thank you again so much for taking time to join us here. We have some special guests with us that are going to be addressing a key important policy in Pennsylvania General Assembly right now, and also some of the opportunities that are going to be presented with a court case that's going to the Supreme Court. So that's where we're headed. We're going to be talking about the heartbeat bill here in Pennsylvania, followed by a little bit of discussion on this Supreme Court case that's going to be happening in the coming months, and be able to take some questions. So if you do have some questions, those that are on this live, you're welcome to use the chat box to engage with some questions. We'll try to get to some of those as we get into this webinar. So feel free to use the chat box. I wanted to start by introducing State Representative Stephanie Borowicz. She is the prime sponsor of the heartbeat bill here in Pennsylvania. She represents the 76th district, I believe Clinton County, parts of Center County. I wanted to highlight she's a former teacher, fourth grade teacher. She is the wife of a pastor, so I know that brings so many things of service to her role. And I wanted to particularly highlight, it brings me much joy looking at the state legislative site, as her past occupation is stay-at-home mom. And I think that's just outstanding. So Representative Borowicz, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for taking the time for this.
Of course, this is important to me. And it should be important to all of us. But yeah, stay-at-home mom, and like I told you guys earlier, God uses the ordinary, and that's me. He uses the weak to shame the strong. And so I just, decided to run for office. I knew this was a time in our nation. And now looking back where we're at, this is a critical time in our nation and what we're going through. So I'm proud to be a state rep that stands for life, and my heartbeat bill is a bill that does just that.
Well, I thank you. The example of seeing someone running for office and making that decision. And I guess now being in office, in particular with this bill, the heartbeat bill, what even just looking at the issue of pro-life and looking to protect the sanctity of human life, what drives you to be supporting those issues?
Life. I heard David Barton say it's the first thing he asked anyone that's going to run for office is, where do you stand on life? And if you get that right, you'll get everything else right, he said. You'll get less taxes, less government. You get everything right if you stand on the side of life. And so this is, obviously, I have 3 children. I understand what life is, that beating heart when you first hear it. And before that, it's at conception, but the intent of this bill is to get it, like we're going to talk about, to the Supreme Court to then overturn Roe versus Wade. And I believe the author of the heartbeat bill, her intent was to be a dagger into into Roe versus Wade and to get the heartbeat bill up to the Supreme Court. So now we see that here at this moment in this juncture in America. And so, this is a strong belief for me. And it comes obviously from the Bible telling us that all life is important. He knew us before we were in our mother's womb. Like he knew us before we were in our mother's womb. So this is a strong conviction for me, and I won't sway on it. From conception, there is life and it must be defended and protected. We've lost 61 million babies' lives, and this is our chance to see that overturned.
Yeah, we certainly, as an organization, the conviction, and many throughout the state, the conviction to protect life. And, it's, over 30,000 babies. And I know you said that at the introduction of the heartbeat bill at the press conference. It's over 30,000 lives are lost every year here in Pennsylvania due to abortion. And so when we look at the heartbeat bill, obviously throughout the country, we're seeing a variety of different policies being proposed and different action being taken. I guess if you could help explain what are the basics with regards to the heartbeat bill. I know it's House Bill 904. What is the heartbeat bill?
Pretty simple. If there's a heartbeat and it can be detected, no abortion can be performed. I mean, that's as early as 6 to 8 weeks. They can, with a Doppler, you can hear the heartbeat. I'll never forget hearing my son's heartbeat the first time. And if that is detected, then no abortion can be performed. I mean, if you think about that, that's very early on. I didn't go to the doctor till 8 to 9 weeks, with my son when I was pregnant. And so it's very early on. So the majority of those 30,000 babies' lives would be saved in Pennsylvania. Obviously, I believe it firmly from conception. And I'd love to see, and possibly might do a conception bill, because I know Texas is doing that also. So heartbeat and then now conception. But this is very clear. Once there's a heartbeat detected, then no abortion can be performed.
And do you mind, I guess, sharing, as a mom, you did bring up about your own experience. I can recall we kind of packed out a press room at the Capitol, and you were sharing about how you scheduled an ultrasound and shared. Do you mind just sharing a little bit more about your experience there?
Yeah, I have 3 boys. Each one, pregnancy can be scary, but that first time you go in, they're looking for a heartbeat, or maybe it was my second appointment, and they put the Doppler on your stomach, and I heard a heartbeat. This is what I said in the press conference. And it was, beating rapidly. I said, "Oh, you found it." He goes, "No, that's yours." I was okay. Well, that's good. I'm still alive. I think I said that at a press conference. And then sure enough, they kept looking for it. I got nervous because I almost couldn't find it. And sure enough, you hear that distinct sound. And my husband loves to make that little, anybody that's had babies knows that sound of that heartbeat. And the minute you hear that, there's life there. And you know that as a mom hearing that heartbeat. And so that made all the difference. 2 heartbeats, 2 lives. It was my heartbeat and my son's. And there's 2 lives there. It's not just mine. It's 2 lives, 2 different heartbeats. And so that was instrumental in me feeling that and knowing. I mean, I was pro-life from a young girl. I mean, with my youth group in my church, I've always stood for life. I was grateful for the groups that came into our churches and our youth groups and explained what happened in abortion, so that I could know from a young age how detrimental this was to life and babies in the womb. So I've always been pro-life. It wasn't like, okay, I got pregnant and then became pro-life. I've always been pro-life, but that just once again reaffirms, when you hear your son or your little daughter's heartbeat, it reaffirms the life that's there.
And I will say, with my first son, I can vividly remember hearing that heartbeat on the ultrasound, and boy, it just becomes so real. When you do hear that. I think it's worth mentioning, and then we'll get into a little bit more on the heartbeat bill. Where we stand here in Pennsylvania. Right now, abortion is allowed up to 24 weeks in pregnancy. That's 6 months in pregnancy, and that was set up back in the 80s with the Abortion Control Act. So obviously, much has advanced when we're talking about ultrasounds, when we're talking about being able to see that baby in the womb. And I wanted to, I guess, looking at with the heartbeat bill, how is it on the doctor and physicians? What is it that specifically would make it the heartbeat to enforce an update, from this 24-week limit that we now have in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it would be on the doctor. I know you guys had sent that question. It would be on the doctor, and he would be, either by sonogram or Doppler, detecting a heartbeat. To be able to state that there's life there. And then according to the law with a heartbeat bill, which Texas just enacted, no abortion can be performed after that. And so, again, that would save so many lives.
No, absolutely. And you bring up Texas. Certainly there's other states that have addressed this law. There's Texas, our neighbors in Ohio. Have passed legislation.
Yeah.
So it's startling, I think, the emphasis too of what we see in New York. You have those in some states that are celebrating the right to an abortion up to 9 months in pregnancy. And it's just disturbing to see. And then it is the encouragement that we see other states that are, bringing up, heartbeat bills. And I'd highlight too, even in our state, we appreciate, the improvements that are trying to be made on our policies, something like the Down Syndrome Protection Act that's been an effort here, or the Unborn Child Dignity Act, really just trying to recognize the humanity of the unborn. There have been in the past of efforts, 20-week bill to limit abortion at 20 weeks that was passed through the legislature, but then vetoed by our governor. Our governor, as a former Planned Parenthood escort, the largest abortion business in the state, and essentially has vetoed any type of pro-life measure. So essentially agreeing to say you can kill a baby just because they have Down syndrome, or that you can kill a baby that frankly could survive on their own if born at 23 weeks, 24 weeks. So it leads to a question, I guess, Representative Borowicz, we know, at least in this session, we have a governor that would veto this type of legislation. So why, some people might ask, why do this? Why go through the effort if it's just going to be vetoed?
Well, first of all, I will stand before the Lord one day on my own, and I will not have a governor there with me. So I am doing what I'm called to do. I cannot decide for a governor what he's going to do. And so I have to do what I've been sent there for. And this is one of the reasons I'm there. And so I'm going to push forward, whether the results are not my decision. The result that, it is my job to do what I can as a state representative. And so I'm going to push this as hard as I can. I also think it'll be instrumental in the fall as this goes up to the US Supreme Court, that I am advocating in Pennsylvania, the state of independence, for life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness for every child in the womb. And so I just believe that God will use it. If we are fighting and standing up in this battle, like you guys are going to do, and we're all going to march, it's going to all play an impact and a role that we just might not even understand. But it's all going to play an impact and a role at seeing this overturned. And then hopefully, Lord willing, we get a governor that is pro-life, not just in word, but in deed, and that he actually follows through with it. And we see this overturned in Pennsylvania and babies' lives saved in Pennsylvania. So.
Yep, absolutely. We certainly cherish life here at the Family Institute, and there's many around the state that do. You mentioned about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and I guess maybe let's transition. Another guest here on this webinar is Judge Cheryl Allen. She has been a tremendous leader with our organization, being a part of helping to us advance some causes. She's a former Superior Court justice, and I'd like to welcome Judge Allen. Judge Allen, thank you so much for taking time as well to be a part of this. I know that you have followed a little bit of what this Supreme Court case is. It's the Dobbs case, I think has been said, looking at a state law in Mississippi. Do you mind highlighting some of the core elements with this case and how it will look to impact a state like Pennsylvania?
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here, and I thank you, Representative Borowicz, for your presentation. And I agree wholeheartedly with you that we have a responsibility to speak the truth without concern or over concern for who receives it.
Right.
And so, we cannot let the short-sightedness or blindness of others deter us. And I'm honored to be a part of the Pennsylvania Family Institute and have this opportunity to stand up for an issue that I am passionate about. And so we have the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health case out of the state of Mississippi. And this case arose because in 2018, the Mississippi legislature and the governor signed into law what is called the Gestational Age Act. And this is an act that was designed to protect the health and safety of mothers, the dignity of unborn children, and the integrity of the medical society. And through this act, it was determined that there would be no abortions permitted after 15 weeks of gestation, unless it was a medical emergency or there was some severe fetal abnormality, which was well supported by medicine. After the governor, or shortly after the governor signed this legislation into law, the Jackson Women's Health Center, among others, sought a preliminary or a restraining order and an injunction against this law. And they filed lawsuit for this injunction in the federal district court. And the federal district court, after limiting discovery, they decided to grant summary judgment on the basis that this was a law that sought to prohibit abortion pre-viability. And the case was appealed to the Fifth Circuit, which affirmed the district trial court. And the result was that the state of Mississippi, the Attorney General, they filed for a petition for writ of certiorari to the US Supreme Court. And they raised essentially three issues. The first issue was whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional, which was the holding of the trial court and affirmed by the Fifth Circuit. The second issue they raised was they sought to have the court set a standard for viability because, or not necessarily a standard for viability, but to clear up the confusion between the Casey case and the Helderstedt case, because Casey was held that to impose certain restrictions would place an undue burden on women. And the Helderstedt case held that the court would have to balance the state's interest with the undue burden. And of course, the state was required to supply proof that its interest outweighed the burden that would be placed upon women seeking an abortion. The third issue was the standing issue, the issue of whether or not an abortion provider has standing to seek to validate a law as a third party. Well, the Supreme Court decided that it would hear only and decide only the first issue, whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. Now, in a sense, that issue in and of itself may serve to address the second issue, meaning the conflict between Casey and Helderstedt. However, I think we would have all liked to have the Supreme Court address the standing issue, because from my perspective, it's clearly a conflict of interest for an abortion provider who has a financial interest in performing as many abortions as possible to have the right to invalidate a law that would prohibit abortions. Now, the argument based from Roe v. Wade is that the Constitution guarantees abortion through a right of privacy. And the truth of the matter is the Constitution does not protect a right to abortion, nor does it limit any state's authority to restrict abortion. Nothing in the text, structure, history, or tradition makes abortion a fundamental right according to the United States Constitution. And nothing denies the states the power to restrict it. This case, as it goes up to the Supreme Court, raises the 10th Amendment, and it concerns the 10th Amendment, which basically says that judicial review of a state law should only take place where it cannot be established that the state has a reasonable, rational basis for reviewing or for implementing that law. In other words, the Supreme Court should only take up the review where there is no rational basis for the implementation of the law. Now, the Mississippi legislature determined that there was a rational basis for the law. One was to protect the health of the mother. And it's been established that abortions performed from 16 to 20 weeks pose a substantially greater risk to the mother's health. And abortions performed beyond 20 weeks, for each week, the danger increases by 38% to the life of the mother. So late-term abortions provide tremendous threat or increase to the life of the mother. The second reason or rational basis concerns the humanity of the baby, because it's well established that a baby's neural circulatory system is capable of feeling and responding to pain at 10 to 12 weeks. And the baby is able to, at 14 to 20 weeks, the baby is consciously aware of pain. And from there on, at a much earlier stage, the baby is able to, move his fingers, to grasp, to move about the womb, and to allow abortion past the 16th week poses greater torture to the baby. In fact, certain procedures, the basic physiological function of the baby are present after 6 weeks. After 5 weeks, vital organs begin to function, to form, and 3 weeks after the fetus can open and close fingers, make sucking material noises, and sense stimuli from outside of the womb. So the third reason concerns the integrity of the medical profession, because the abortion procedure in and of itself often requires dismemberment of the baby's body. And it's such a torturous procedure that no doctor should be forced to go to perform such a procedure. So the Supreme Court is asked to decide the constitutionality of this issue. And as we've said, there's nothing in the Constitution that really guarantees the right to an abortion. There's nothing in the Constitution that restricts a state's rights to regulate an abortion. Even former Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg took issue with the way that Roe was decided, in the sense that she felt that Roe should have been decided under the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, giving women equal protection with men, rather than the way it was decided, because there is no such thing as privacy, a right to privacy as it relates to abortion. In fact, the Constitution only speaks to privacy as it relates to the First Amendment, the right of freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and so on and so forth. And also the Fourth Amendment, the right to unreasonable searches and seizures of one's home. Those protections, those privacy protections, have to do with government authority. And so the case is most likely will be argued in October or November, and finally decided sometime in the spring, at least by June, by the end of June, when the Supreme Court tends to come out with most of its decisions. The main issue in this case has to do with the issue of, and aside from constitutionality, the whole issue of pre-viability, because what was considered to be a viable age of gestation when Roe was decided, because of medical advances and medical technology, it's just not the same. And if we allow this decision to stand, if this decision is allowed to stand with a rigid viability standard as set by Roe, as set by the Pennsylvania legislature and other legislatures around the country, it will amount to gross unfairness. In fact, we will be allowing for the abortion of babies who are completely viable. I'm wondering, I question whether or not this decision will lead to a complete overturning of Roe v. Wade. I hope it does. That would be wonderful. Or whether or not the court will simply maybe set a new viability standard. I wish the court had decided the court could have decided the standing issue and therefore never gotten to the merits of this case. I'm glad they decided to address the case on its merits because we're in an age where technology can save the life of a baby. And I mean, nobody really knows what the age of viability is. It's a case-by-case issue. And so the idea that you can mandate or limit the prohibitions against an abortion based upon a viability standard is just erroneous, and it's just not proper and appropriate.
Well, thank you, Judge Allen. I know as we head into this case, there are lots of kind of the speculations of what the judges will do. I know there's different options in terms of viability of the standing, looking at Roe v. Wade, looking at Casey v. Planned Parenthood, what happened here in Pennsylvania. And so I think one thing to underscore that I'd welcome Representative Borowicz and Judge Allen, both of you, to comment. When we talk about the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned with this case, certainly we are praying and working towards that end. And certainly there's many reasons why this should be the ruling. If that happens, what is the result? I think many think that, abortion is now outlawed, that it's illegal. What would be the result? So if the Supreme Court decides to overturn Roe v. Wade, what would be now the laws in terms of abortion? So maybe Judge Allen, if you don't mind, and then Representative Borowicz.
Well, the law would be left up to each state. It would be up to each state to determine what its laws what laws they were going to implement to govern or restrict or encourage abortion. But it would be completely a state's issue, which of course would open the door to more potential Supreme Court litigation from many states. But it will be up to the state of Pennsylvania to write its own laws. It will be up to every state to do that.
Yeah, and that's how I understood it, was that it will go back to the states, to the state's laws and what we enact, standing for life. But let me just reiterate how huge that is. I mean, when anyone around the world thinks of abortion, Roe versus Wade is the title. So I think the trickle effect of if and when, well, we'll just speak by faith that when it's overturned, the states will rise up, and it will be a trickle effect through all 50 states and changing our laws. Because like I said, everyone around the world knows Roe versus Wade. And for that, and it signifies the 61 million lives, is identified through that title. So for that to come down will be monumental. But yes, it will go back to the states. So Pennsylvania will enact pro-life legislation after that and see, these babies' lives saved in Pennsylvania. And then I believe all other states. I mean, like you said, we're already seeing other states do this. And so I think it'll just be a trickle effect once that happens.
I think it's
I agree.
important.
When this happens, we should be talking.
That's right.
We should
Absolutely.
speak positively.
Yep.
I think it's important to note also that, the United States is among a few nations in the world that has this pre-viability test to determine whether abortion is legal or not. And of course, as we've seen, many states are trying to do away with that. And some states like New York have succeeded in doing just that by enabling a woman to obtain an abortion if she can establish a a medical reason, which includes mental health, for doing so up to the day the baby is to be born. And so I'm glad, I mean, this case is very timely because I believe that it will not only address these viability prohibitions and their constitutionality, but if viability is the issue, then why do these laws exist in any state?
Mhm. Absolutely. And again, I think it underscores so much of the work that's needed in states. I'll point out those that are live on this call. Certainly, if you had some questions that you wanted to submit, we can look to get to some of them. I know one is just as we look at issues, even like the heartbeat bill, but even beyond that too, what can people do? As we prepare for this coming of overturning Roe v. Wade, what should states be doing? What should people in their local communities be doing in preparation for that? And I guess I'll give Representative Borowicz, just what would you encourage people to be doing right now to help protect lives in the coming days of seeing Roe v. Wade overturned?
Just be active. Call your state reps, call your state senators, have them. We need this heartbeat bill to run on the floor in the fall. Please call the majority leader. Please call the Speaker of the House and let them know we want the heartbeat bill run. Email them. Your voice will be heard if you are persistent and do not sit on the sidelines. I mean, there's a lot of great events that are going to happen this fall, coinciding with this court case. Be involved in those. Go, march for life. And even though it might feel insignificant, it's not. Be involved in what's going on with the pro-life movement, and just stay focused. And then obviously never underestimate prayer and what prayer is going to do to see this overturned, and then help all the states to come alongside them and enact pro-life laws. And so just, you got to be involved. Pray and act. Two things: pray and then stand up and act. And be involved in this fight. So we need all hands on deck. We need everybody involved in this that stands for pro-life. And the majority of Americans stand for life now. I know you probably know the statistic, but it's overwhelming that people stand for life now because, like Judge said, science is behind it. I mean, we see, with sonograms, you have 4D sonograms, you can see the baby sucking his thumb or her thumb. I mean, there's life there. It's undeniable. So be involved, pray, and then stand up and act and get involved. There's so much you can do.
I think it's also important. I think it's also important that we not allow the pro-abortion movement to saddle our movement with the claim that we only care about children before they're born and not after they're born. Because I've heard so many people say, well, and I remember the pro-life evangelicals for Biden saying that, there are other life issues such as poverty, that healthcare is a life issue, education is a life issue, so on and so forth. But I think we have to be very clear in saying to people that those are quality of life issues, which we don't even reach if you don't have a life. So if you manage to exterminate a life in the womb, which is the whole purpose of the eugenics movement in the first place, then you never reach all of those other issues. And also, as believers, our churches have been directly involved in not only discouraging abortion, encouraging life, but assisting people, young women and young men who find themselves in a pregnancy situation to find help. There's counseling, there's resource, helping them to find the resources with employment, with education, providing the necessary items that a mother needs to raise a baby. The church has been very, very visible and very, very active in supporting our pregnancy care centers. But, you can't equate healthcare. You can't talk about poverty when you have extinguished a life before. You have to have a life in order to deal with life issues. And so I think we have to be very, very adamant about that, because I've had so many people say, well, you only care about babies in the womb. You don't care about them after they're born. And, that's the title that they try to stick on people, but it's just not appropriate. And we need to stand up and blow back against it.
And I'll add to that, I appreciate, introducing even some folks from around the state to representatives like Representative Borowicz here. And there are many that are looking to stand up for life. And there was a hearing in the House that dealt with looking at abortion laws. And I found it ironic looking at the question of, kind of unwanted children or that issue. Planned Parenthood was testifying at one of these hearings and accused pregnancy centers that they don't provide prenatal care. And I found it so ironic that the largest abortion business in the state does not do any prenatal care themselves whatsoever. And there are so many pregnancy centers around our state that are doing tremendous work for moms and children, especially once the baby is born, diapers and formulas and classes and care. I mean, it's tremendous to see so many. So it is that example of, there are many that care for these children, especially beyond, just seeing them being born. So I found it ironic to see Planned Parenthood accusing pregnancy centers of that when they themselves profit from the abortion and do nothing for a woman that wants to carry a child. So go ahead.
Now, I was just going to add to that, Planned Parenthood provides a woman with one choice. Pregnancy care centers provide women with options. They serve to let women know that you are not limited to this one choice. You have many choices, and we will assist you in choosing life. So I find it ironic also, because they say we are pro-choice, but they really only give a woman seeking an abortion one choice, and that's abortion, which is final.
Well, we thank the many that get involved with pregnancy centers, get involved with their church, get involved with the Pennsylvania Family Institute in taking action. As Representative Borowicz was saying, we need to pray, we need to act. One way you can act is even just getting in touch with your elected officials about this issue. So you can go on our website, it's pafamily.org/heartbeat is one way to send an email to your state representative, your state senator. Let them know where you stand on this issue. We certainly encourage you, even with the upcoming Pennsylvania March for Life, to invite your legislator to attend that, to stand with you, to march with you over at the Capitol. But they should hear from you on these policies like the heartbeat bill. So be sure you're taking action. Be sure you're taking that alert that you can use. Again, pafamily.org/heartbeat, and be in communications with on your state level, state senator, state representative on those issues. So I wrap up as we look to conclude the webinar. Representative, again, I know that there's the actions to take as we look into the heartbeat bill. Are there anything more that can be done in terms of the educational aspects of this? I know when people look at their church, when they look at getting involved, whether it's with a pregnancy center or others, what are some ways that you see as a representative that are helpful in educating others about policy?
Yeah, I mean, those are great. The church really needs to be involved, and we're seeing them start to do this, especially with the pro-life movement. I saw a church had Abby Johnson this weekend, and I know our church has had our local pregnancy centers that are just the hands and feet of Jesus. They do take care of that mother and that child, and they help them along the way. They don't just, oh yeah, okay, now that you're having life, they're not involved in their life. That's an absolute lie. And so get involved in these organizations, push your church, not push your church. You say, hey, I want to come have a bus and go to the March for Life through our church and organize that. Or, I want to bring in this person, or have a booth at the church to make sure there's pro-life and how to contact your state rep. These are all instrumental things that are going to be important heading into the fall and the spring with all that's going on. So be involved, like I said, and whatever that takes. And these groups are out there getting the job done, these pregnancy resource centers, and we're trying to bring one into my district now, another one. And so they are the hands and feet of Jesus in this, as well as, so it's all of us coming together and collectively standing for life. So, and we will win in this fight. We will win in this battle.
I want to underscore again what you were talking about. The need is right now in Pennsylvania, there is the Supreme Court case happening with the Dobbs case that may finally overturn Roe v. Wade. We also have here in the state of Pennsylvania a threat to our current laws on abortion. The abortion industry in Pennsylvania, Allegheny Reproductive Health Center out in Pittsburgh,
Yes.
and essentially every abortion business in the state has brought a lawsuit that would not only look to force taxpayers, you as a taxpayer, to pay for abortion through Medicaid, but perhaps it might find a right to an abortion in our Constitution. It's not there, but the activism that could happen to say that, you have to have a right to an abortion in our state, which would jeopardize every type of law that we have, informed consent, 24-hour waiting period, these types of laws that have been on the books for decades, that would be in jeopardy with a ruling like that. I know, Judge Allen, I guess I know you've been following that case as well. I don't know if you'd have some brief insights for us in terms of the status of that case and really the threat that it poses.
Well, the case was brought before the Commonwealth Court, and in addition to the issue of requiring Medicaid funds or allowing the Medicaid funding to be free to fund abortions, the standing issue was raised that I mentioned before. Now, the Commonwealth Court never reached the merits of the case. They simply dismissed the case on the basis that the abortion clinics did not have standing to bring this case on behalf of their clients, which is an issue that we would have liked to have seen the US Supreme Court finalize. So the case will be going up before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They will have to address the standing issue, and then they will address whether or not the denial of Medicaid funding for abortions violates the Equal Protection Clause. Their argument is that poor and Black minority women, particularly Black women, are being harmed because they are not being given the opportunity to